Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. Today our very special guest is Assemblyman Micah Kellner from the east side of Manhattan. Michael, welcome to Reaching Out.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Tell us a little bit about your district.
I represent the east side of Manhattan and Roosevelt Island. I have from 60th Street up to 92nd Street, from the east side of 3rd Avenue over to the East River, and as I said before, Roosevelt Island. We have some major projects going on, like the 2nd Avenue subway, which is being constructed right in the middle of my district. We have the Cornell Technion New Applied Sciences Center being built on Roosevelt Island, and we have some wonderful new parks in the area.
The 2nd Avenue subway is being built in your district. Can you give us an update on that?
Right now, they're building the first segment of the 2nd Avenue subway, and that's going to run from 96th Street down to 63rd Street with stops at 86th, 83rd, 72nd, and 63rd, as well as 96th. That is going to be the first segment. It is then going to go up to 125th Street and eventually all the way down to Hanover Square. The 2nd Avenue subway was first conceived back in the 1930s, but every time they seemed to get the project started, there was some fiscal calamity either at the city or state level, and it was cut off. They tried to build it again in the 70s. It got started and then quickly came to a halt. Now we actually have the money from the feds, full funding agreement from the FTA and the state, and we're building this. And the goal is to make sure that we build it all the way down to Hanover Square. The Lexington Avenue line, the 456 train, is the most overcrowded piece of public transportation, not only in the city, not only in the state, but in the nation. And so we really need a second subway line on 2nd Avenue. The issue is, whenever you're building a project of such enormity, it really inconveniences folks. And we've done a lot in the community to try to relieve the congestion, the environmental hazards, and the daily construction problems that occur so that people can go about their daily lives, people can conduct business, so businesses don't close while they're building this. Because when it opens, it's going to be great. 600,000 people are going to be able to step on that subway the first day. That 96th to 63rd segment is then going to run over, connect into the NR lines, and go downtown through Midtown.
And what is the train? Did they name the train yet? Or?
Oh, I can't off the top of my head. They gave it a letter and a number, and I can't remember it. Sorry to say.
So when you said it was first conceived in 1930 and the project was on and off, when was the groundbreaking ceremony? What year was the groundbreaking? They
actually built some tunnels. There are pieces of tunnels both when they first started in the 1930s and then again in the 1970s. In fact, at one point in time, there are tunnels up at 99th Street that the MTA thought they could use for other things and actually tried to do an RFP to rent them out. People thought about using them for racquetball courts along with other things. But the groundbreaking for this iteration of the 2nd Avenue subway was in 2006.
Wow. So when is the estimated date of completion?
The estimated date of completion for this segment is about 2018. It's been pushed back 3 times now. Hopefully, that's when we'll finally get it open.
Okay. It seems like a long time, but then again, I remember 1994, so here we are. So tell us, how did you fare during the storm? You mentioned you represent Roosevelt Island. Tell us how Roosevelt Island was affected.
Actually, Roosevelt Island was probably the worst affected part of my district. I have a small segment of my district in flood zone A. The vast majority of folks were perfectly fine. We had a lot of down trees there. A lot of other communities a lot worse off. But it really revealed to us some of the problems in our district, particularly on Roosevelt Island, where we had some major flooding at the north end of the island. I have Kohler and Goldwater Hospital out there.
Yes.
I know some of your members work out there. Sadly, Kohler Hospital, the north end, flooded. We lost power for over a week. One of the buildings, the Octagon at the north end of the island, lost power for over a week. And water was just rising and rising. Technically, it's in flood zone A, technically it's in flood zone B, but one has to reconsider that after we saw the amount of flooding going on the north end of the island. The water was going up, and engulfing almost half of the light tower at the north end of the island.
So any fatalities, or did you have to evacuate the hospital?
What they did was they took some of the more severe patients and took them down to Goldwater at the south end of the island, but they kept a lot of people, unfortunately, resting in place, and it definitely did not go as well as folks had planned.
What do you mean by that?
People were left alone, resting, in the dark, without power, for a few days. Those who were not as medically fragile as those that they had taken down to the Goldwater campus, which still had power.
And how were those people's conditions when the power was restored? And
I think people, they had they were, no one was really hurt, but I think people were rather upset that they were sort of forgotten during this process.
If you're left in the dark, I mean, there's nothing there. They were just there.
It's a residential hospital. It's a long-term hospital, and those who weren't considered medically fragile were just sort of left there.
That's unfortunate. How are those people doing now?
I think they're doing great. In the weeks afterwards, that they've restored power and really cleaned up the basement of Kohler, and things are going on. I mean, there are some really great professionals who work for Health and Hospitals Corporation, and they really took care of those people.
Very good, and we'd like to hear that. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. We're listening to Reaching Out. Our very special guest is Micah Kellner. He is the Assemblyman from the east side of Manhattan and also Roosevelt Island. And we were here talking about Hurricane Sandy, and now we want to talk about one of his legislative initiatives, which is raising the minimum wage.
Yeah. I think the one big mistake that we didn't do before the end of the legislative session was raising the minimum wage in Albany. We have not raised the minimum wage in New York State since 2006. So it's been now 7 years since we've had a minimum wage increase. If you had indexed our minimum wage to inflation, the federal minimum wage would be $10.03 now. In New York, it'd be $10.80 when it's stuck at $7.25. We're asking for just a very basic increase in the minimum wage to $8.50. It would make us the second highest minimum wage of any state behind Washington State. And we know that when people who earn those types of wages, when they get a raise, they put that money right back in the economy. They're buying better food. They're able to go out to shows a little more. So we really need to raise the minimum wage in the state. It's a moral imperative at this point for our working class New Yorkers.
I just thought of something. Do you know what the minimum wage was 41 years ago?
I don't.
You would have no idea, and I'm hoping my math is correct. 1981. Mm-hmm. It's about 41 years, right? 1981, the minimum wage was, no, it actually was 32 years ago, 31. The minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. Mm. And here we are 31 years later. 32 years later, the minimum wage is being talked about being raised to what?
$8.50.
Yeah.
It's not that much.
It's not that much. So those who are crying saying we can't afford to raise the minimum wage, if you just think back 32, 31 years ago, the minimum wage was $3.35 an hour.
And those people who are crying about not being able to raise the minimum wage, they're gonna reap the effects, because the same people they're gonna be paying a little more are gonna be spending more, and that's a good thing.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Our very special guest, Micah Kellner, Assemblyman from the east side of Manhattan and also Roosevelt Island. Thank you, Micah, for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg.